I'm Corbett Wall with DB Auction, here with your cattle market summary for the week ending August the 23rd, where we're 2 weeks removed now from the fire at Tyson Fresh Meats there in Holcomb, Kansas, the Finney County plant. And been a lot of stuff happened since then, a lot of anger, a lot of fear, a big disruption in your cattle markets and your trade. Of course, your packers have seen huge profits, probably the biggest margins they've ever had in history. Tyson itself, Tyson Foods, trading at their stock price at an all-time record high late in the week, and all from that fire. And you would have thought that would have been disruptive for them, that they've seen huge margins as they've jumped the box beef cutout values over $25 on choice cutouts. All the while, your cattle people are the ones that's left holding the bag. In that 2 weeks, your live cattle futures have come back some. They're still about $4 lower than what they were on your spot markets compared to before the fire. Feeder cattle markets down about $1.50, but we've seen kind of a resurgence in them. Your fat cattle cash $4 to $5 lower, as they did come up a little bit this week, but just not a lot of confidence in your feeders to try to get any more, as we're getting into heavy supply of market ready cattle, and we know that. Your feeder cattle only about $3 off of what they were. We've seen your yearling feeders come up as your yearling supplies have started to dwindle, and now we'll get progressively where a bigger percentage of your receipts are calves, and your calves is where it's really gone down. Your calf prices have been sharply lower. Your out front sales in your videos and private treaty of calf sales are sharply lower. But at the same time, we know that we're going to have lighter numbers of calves. I think all of us that are paying attention as we drive around and we analyze these markets know that this calf crop that's coming this fall is going to be a lot lighter. Even though your USDA reports say we're just now getting to where we're stopping the increase in supplies, I think we're going to see on the forefront that our numbers are a lot lighter. You talk to guys up in the Midwest and Nebraska, they said the calves just aren't out there, the big numbers of calves. We're finally going to start seeing the lighter numbers show up from the big losses that we saw in the blizzards and the bad winter last winter and in the floods, and guys have sold off a lot of cows. It's not reported a whole lot, but your slaughter cow auctions up in the Midwest and where they saw all the trouble, especially in Nebraska, your slaughter cow auctions that normally run 150, 200 head of slaughter cows have been running 600, 700, 800 cows. And they don't have a sale every week, but still the percentage increase in your slaughter cow numbers in that area have been big. So we're going to see a lot less calves coming out of that part of the country as we go forward, but I still think it's going to show up this fall in your calf run. But we haven't seen anybody really do anything about what's happened to your cattle industry in the last 2 weeks. We hear a lot of producers, you hear guys like me talking about it and really frustrated and wish something would happen, but the people that we pay to pay attention to that, the people that we pay through checkoff dollars to do that, the people we pay in membership dues have yet to really do anything. Now, some of your smaller producer organizations like RCAF and U.S. Cattlemen's Association have started to stir a little dust up, and they may be doing something, but our biggest NCBA has yet to do anything. They've had a little conference call, all of about 30 minutes long, most of it just kind of a supply and demand report that they had brought in, which took up most of the time. Nobody is calling for an investigation. Nobody is demanding an investigation of price fixing, price gouging, collusion to be able to get that market up so quickly on your beef. And that's really where the collusion is most blatant. how do you get your boxes on the spot market that much higher? Unless they huddled up beforehand. There's no way that they would be gutsy enough to keep fixing those prices that much higher and forcing your beef purchasers to pay that kind of money. Something had to be happening, and there's got to be some kind of investigation. Now, this past week we did start to see our markets return a little bit. Our feeder cattle receipts have finally started to return late in the week, but now we've got ourselves behind selling feeder cattle. And now that we've done that, now we're going to have a glut of numbers to run through right as we get here, and it's probably going to show up more so after Labor Day, which we start to see bigger receipts in anyway. Then we're going to have a lot of cattle to choke, so that's going to hurt the market more. Whenever these box beef cutout values that they've raised so sharply here in the last couple of weeks, when those hit your meat counters, that's what's really going to hurt demand, as some people just won't be able to pay it. So it'll probably show up as fast as Labor Day weekend. And if Labor Day weekend shows up and the guys can't afford to cook steaks, well, they might have to cook something else. You know, pork chops aren't too bad. And they're pretty easy to cook. It's hard to screw up a pork chop. But that's the kind of things that we're going to see linger from this and go on. But you know, a lot of people have kind of backed off of it, getting cooler heads, and you know, you don't see as much steam coming out of their ears. But I think something is going to happen. We've got some people, maybe not in the top roles, but in some pretty key positions that have been kind of arranging themselves and getting into a position where they can do something. I think maybe these state organizations are going to get together and do something. The leadership there is probably stronger than it is on a national level, and I look forward to something like that happening, and I'll definitely be a big supporter of it. But let's look at the board for last week. Your August live cattle futures, as they are maturing, we're in the spot August on both live cattle and feeder cattle, going to be finishing up this week. Your Monday on August live cattle was up 27 cents, Tuesday up $1.60, Wednesday up 87 cents, and Thursday up $2.30, which is up, that's big gains there all week long. Friday, some profit taking, down 35 cents to end the week at 104.62. That was up $4.70 for the week. August feeder cattle, Monday was up $1.10, Tuesday up 62, Wednesday up $1.07, Thursday up $1.02, and then Friday profit taking there down $1.05. Now your out fronts are down a lot more sharply than that, but August feeder cattle ended the week at 137.35, up $2.78 for the week. September was down 317 on Friday. All of those were down hard on Friday, and the cattle on feed report didn't come out until after. That would have helped a little bit, but September ended the week at 133 and a quarter, up only 88 cents for the week with that sharply lower market on Friday. But the cattle on feed report, we got to talk about that. I tell you, there's been so much stuff going on in the markets with this fire and everything. People didn't really pay that much attention, and woof, all of a sudden we got a cattle on feed report coming out on Friday. It was bullish. It should support, especially on your placements, and that's the biggest number anymore that your analysts have a hard time pegging. But cattle on feed report come out on Friday with on feed numbers for August 1st coming in at 100.2, and that was less than your average of the analyst guess at 100.6. Placements is where it was really bullish, with placement numbers through July coming in at 97.8% of a year ago, and the average of the analyst guess was 99.5, although they didn't really have an idea. The range ran from 96.6 all the way up to 108.5, but come out at 99.5, and that's bullish, almost 2% less than what the average was. And your marketings for July come in at 106.8, which is huge. Of course, we had an extra day in there of business, but that's exactly where they thought it was going to be. And those are pretty easy to nail because USDA tells us exactly how many cattle are killed every day. So those numbers, that's a bullish report. Your weights, though, you got to look at those weights. We've been talking that we're going to have a lot of market-ready cattle on feed. Even though that August 1st cattle on feed August 1st inventory number was only 100.2. It's still the biggest that we've ever had for this report, and they always say since the series began back in the 90s, but there's always something bigger or lighter or different than we've ever had in the series. But your weights on that cattle on feed report for your placements, those weighing under 800 pounds were down 8.2%. So your lighter cattle, why is that? Because we've had fairly good grass. It's starting to get dry around, especially in the southern plains now, but we had good forage all summer long for the most part. So your weights on placements under 8 are down 8.2% on this report, but your heavier weights over 800 pounds were up 7.2%. So that tells us we're going to have a lot of cattle to work through. It's going to be tough to get through this over the next 3 months or so. But then after that, I think the fall calf run is going to be kind of spoiled because of the fire. We've already lost a lot of ground on our calf sales. I think it's going to be kind of tough sledding. Your fat market's going to struggle to get through this fall. But then after we get through this fall, I think we've got things to look forward to, especially if we can get some of these associations to get together and demand something to happen about all the collusion and the price gouging that happened the last 2 weeks through the fire ordeal. But let's look at some of your fat cattle trade last week, the way it ended up. Through Thursday, just under 18,000 head in your 5 area feeding regions, so they really hadn't done anything, only in the northern plains. The southern plains didn't sell till Friday, but in the northern plains through Thursday of last week, 108 to 111. Your live steers averaged just under 109, so that's higher. That's a little bit better. I was kind of glad to see that. Your dress sales from 170 to 178, mostly 172 to 178, with your weighted average just over 175, and we thought the bulk of the trade was at 175. That goes to show us is a little bit better than that, and that's about $4.50 higher dressed on those average dress steer prices there than when we had a week ago. But on Friday, the bulk of your trade, and I think it'll be sizable, it'll be bigger than the last couple of weeks. Southern Plains sold at 106. We thought maybe they could get a little bit better than that because not much of a basis there to trade with, so you wouldn't think that many people would be anxious to take that. But with the board down a little bit on Friday, a lot of them did. So 106 was your price in Texas and Kansas. That's a buck higher, so we'll take that. Nebraska was mostly 108 live, and that's 2 to 3 better, and then some more of that 175 up to 178, so that's going to be better there. So we'll just, like I said, anytime we gain $1, that's a gift. I think that's what the Packers kind of give up because they were almost like a cheating spouse, the way that they had their heads down over the blatant price gouging that they've done the last couple of weeks. You see that carried on your box beef cutout buyers. But your beef purchasers getting smart, and it's really too late for them to stock their shelves for Labor Day, so they didn't have to buy that much. So we didn't see a whole lot of movement in your box beefs on the spot market, but still, your average trade for the week still sharply higher than the previous week. Choice cuts, your average trade for last week was $239.87, still up $9.44 compared to the previous week when we saw the bulk of the gains. Select cuts, your average trade last week was $214.62, up just short of $9. But by week's end on Friday, they had drifted a lot lower than that. So now we'll see some purchasing come back in at the lower levels, which will be similar to what they were before the fire. But I tell you what, the Packers got a lot of good out of all that. But still, Giant Choice Select spreads $25.25, but only 431 loads, which is very light for the week's trade, which goes to show you your beef purchasers just had enough. They were frustrated, and as bad as it was on your cattle end, what the Packers did, they did the other guys dirtier than they did the cattle guys, because they set that price, and guys either buy it or they don't. And this week they finally said, you know what? I'm not going to be able to get it in here before Labor Day to do me any good anyway. To heck with you guys. Not going to buy any more of it, and you're going to have to get things back in line with where they ought to be before I buy any more. So the party's kind of over for your Packers. the way it was. They're going to have to kind of get back in line. And don't be surprised if we don't come in here and see something going on to investigate everything that went on the last 2 weeks since the fire. What else is going on in around the industry? Your slaughter. That's the big one. 654,000 for the week. With that big plant down. Remember, we weren't going to have a place to go with these cattle. That's 12,000 more than the same week a year ago. And Labor Day was happening the same day, same time a year ago as it is this year. That's some of the biggest kills we've seen since like 2011. But that 654,000 was 3,000 more than the giant week we had last week right after the fire. They didn't need this capacity. There's even talk of starting to kill some on Sundays. They've asked the USDA, because they have to have inspectors and graders on site to do that. They've asked them to get approval for that. They've gotten approval for that. They may start cranking up, especially Tyson, in some plants on Sunday for a late shift kill on Sunday. Hasn't happened yet, but we'll see. It might happen. But Tyson's got to get some of these formula cattle dead that they've already got spoken for. But with that plant down for them, but everybody else is stepping it up. But 654,000. That is a huge kill. 12,000 more than the same week a year ago, and we were on big kills a year ago. But it just goes to show you how they put out what they want and just make the narrative what they want to take advantage of everybody on these markets, and it's sickening the way that they've done it. But you look at some other news. Trump has made an arrangement with Japan. It's all leading up to this G7 summit in France. But come out on Sunday morning that Trump has made a deal. Just on the surface, they haven't spelled out everything. But Japan, which we've been getting along with them pretty good all along, but we need something to take the place of China not coming in. But Japan came in, and they're going to buy a lot of corn off of us. A lot of this surplus corn we have, the old crop corn, a lot of the corn we have in storage. It's going to help us loosen up some space for this new crop that'll be coming in here in the next several weeks. But that's good for the corn farmers, and Trump needs to do something for them. Of course, they're all going to be getting this cheese check that they're getting because of all the tariffs that we've been getting from China. Trump made that deal and going to be giving them a big check per acre for all these corn farmers. Not sure when the cattle guys are ever going to get any help. They never get any help. And if you ask somebody at the government level, they say, well, we're keeping grain cheap, and that's your help through that. Well, I think they'd like to get a check, something they can cash, because with the way the market's going, just working off the basis there, we're losing our market position. And like I said so many times last week, these cattle producers need money, real money, not just an exchange or what's going on. They've got to have something they can take to the farm and ranch store, something they can take to their banks to help take care of some of these loans they've got, and they just continue to lose ground on the percentage of their operation that they actually own. But let's talk about your feeder cattle market. Your real-time index on Cattle Market Central ended the week at 138.63. That's $3.07 higher than a week ago. So we had good sales through the week, and we had really light receipts early in the week. By midweek, we started to turn back around, more confidence come back in the market, so guys were ready to sell some cattle, but we're behind. A lot of those guys would have liked to have sold cattle the last couple of weeks, and they just, they didn't want to go broke. They didn't want to lose their whole place, so they've ended up holding on to them. Now, leading up to Labor Day, we probably won't see that many big sales. We've got some big sales. Elgin, Nebraska is going to have a hell of a good sale on Monday. You guys should get in there and do that. Fredonia, Kansas has got a good sale on Tuesday of this week. They've got a big special. It's their anniversary sale. Got a lot of green grass yearlings in there, and you can count on that one to get some numbers filled in for some empty pens because the runs have been light. And then Jim Herzog and his boys are going to have a good sale on Thursday. They've got a lot of good cattle already lined up for that. They got Matt Lowry coming in to sell them. That's always a draw when you get some of these world champion auctioneers to come in for a special. So that'll be good for those three big sales that we're having this week. likely a lot of other sales will continue to have lighter receipts until after Labor Day. Get this fire deal further behind us, and then we'll come back in kind of at the start of the fall, and we'll have some good runs. But your cash feeders and your sale barns, all classes, $3 to $6 higher, where tested, and that's the key thing, where they were tested, $3 to $6 higher. But a lot of your auctions, and even still some canceled sales, just because still too much fear going around early in the week. But like I said, later in the week, like at Pratt, Kansas, Salina, a lot of places like that started to have more of a regular type run as more confidence come back in. But 3 to 6 higher, and like I said, your RTI was over $3 higher on your feeder steers there that go into the index. But the last 2 weeks, this past week and the week right after the fire, and Lonnie Peets did this, and the report that I used to do when I was with USDA, your feeder cattle summary, Lonnie Peets in there. I've known him for a long time. He's one of the bright spots on USDA Market News. Does a lot of good job analyzing the market as far as you can do when you're at USDA, because they don't really consider that an essential element anymore, analyzing the market. Anyways, Lonnie does a good job there, and you need to read that report every Friday, and I get a lot of good information off of it too. Of course, when you're in that spot, you've got your fingers on a lot of good data right there, and if you try a little bit like he does, and a few of the other guys, got Tom Walters there in Nebraska, does a good job leading that Nebraska program. You got Justin Lumpkin up there in South Dakota. He does a good job with that program, and that's about it as far as I can say on doing a good job. But the last 2 weeks of your nationwide feeder cattle auction receipts, the one right after the fire and this past week, those are the lightest 2 non-holiday weeks on record for feeder cattle sales. So you don't think that fire has disrupted your feeder cattle sales? What that fire, which is going to be long forgotten by the time these feeder cattle, and especially the calves that have been hit the hardest, ever make it to the show list, is nothing. But it's just the way that the whole drama of the deal happens. But now we're going to be way behind on selling our calves and yearlings. But the lightest 2 non-holiday receipts of feeder cattle than we have on record. Now let's talk about some stick-out sales. Mankato Livestock, Mankato, Kansas. Look at here on Friday, 65 head of 806-pound steers bring $144.75. That's like $5 or $6 higher than the index, guys. And then a good sale at Crawford, Nebraska, Crawford Livestock Market. Now they did call it $2 to $5 lower than 2 weeks ago. What's happened in the last 2 weeks? That damn fire at Tyson Fresh Meats. So you got to expect that. But like I've said several times, that's about what we've lost, $3 or $4 now on our market since that fire. But we're starting to come back and got confidence coming back, and you can feel assured you're going to bring cattle to the sale. They're going to bring something that's respectable, and we weren't sure of that right after that fire, but they called the market $2 to $5 lower. But look at this market report on Cattle Market Central. You see, this is all the cattle, not just the selected cattle to report. This is all the cattle that went through the sale there at Crawford, minus those weighing over 1,000, because that doesn't show up on our Cattle Market Central market report. But look at your best tested weights on steers. 223 out of 8-weight steers average 849 at 139.19. 516 head, 968 pound on the average 9-weight steers bring 136.34 on your weighted average for 9-weight steers. Look at your heifers. 244 head of 8-weight heifers average 841 at 133.19. Your stick out sale that I saw in Crawford, Nebraska, 128 head of 991 pound steers bring 137.75. Crawford, Nebraska, Crawford Livestock Market. And then I forgot to mention, or didn't get that in the last report, Valentine Livestock, Valentine, Nebraska. Of course, they have those big stick out sales. They had a string of Herefords in there. And there's a difference in them, guys. You know, the Herefords get kind of a bad rap. My grandmother wouldn't have had anything but a horned Hereford cow in her place. She said you can cross them with anything and make something pretty good, and something's got to fight those coyotes off the baby calves, and a horned Hereford cow would do it. But these polled Herefords they had in there, I tell you what, awful good cattle there. But look at two jags of those Hereford consignments there in Valentine. 57 head of 900-pound Hereford steers bring a $146 on Thursday in Valentine, and then the Leiter Brothers 67 head weighed 822 pounds at $150-250. That's a look at your week's markets from the YO Ranch Hotel in Kerrville, Texas on the road. We'll talk to you next week.